Welcome to the MVP podcast, where we talk about anything NBA. I'm Sam Holcroft, alongside Payton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. Today, we're going to do our fourth edition of our custom NBA stock market game. So let's just go right into it. Starting with the top gainers and top losers. Our top gainers, we had the Pelicans gaining $6.60 over the last 2 weeks. The Bucks had $6.15. Lakers $5.81. The Mavericks $5.31. The Heat $4.35. Other teams that gained money were the Cavaliers, the Celtics, the Kings, the 76ers, the Bulls, the Rockets, the Timberwolves, the Jazz, the Spurs, and the Clippers. Our top losers, the Suns lost $7.36 a share, while the Hawks lost $7.16. The Knicks $5.91, Raptors $4.46, and the Blazers lost $4.27. Other teams that lost money were the Nuggets, the Suns, I guess they were a top loser, Pacers, Grizzlies, the Nets, Thunder, Warriors, Hornets, Magic, Wizards, and the Pistons still losing money. In terms of our performances, Geigh gained $533.87 over the last week, bringing his yearly total gains to $1,353.37. I gained $358.22, putting my yearly gains at $698.02. And PT, good news and bad news. Bad news is you lost money. Good news is it's not as bad as it has been. So you lost $51.80, putting your yearly loss to $334.06. So PT, as we can tell on this sheet, I mean, you're making moves. So the floor is yours. What all are you doing? I don't care if you talk for 10 minutes. You can talk about all the stocks that you're selling and adding.
All right, so I just want to start this off saying that I think it's this week for me is a little bit more about what I want to buy and less about what I want to sell. I think I have a little bit more reasoning for the stocks that I want to buy versus the ones that I want to sell. I think more so the ones that I'm selling, I kind of just don't really want to deal with anymore. I'm just not really believing that the benefit back from keeping them, holding them is going to be enough to save money and not put money that I'd get back from getting money for other teams. So, but I'll touch on a couple. The Magic I think is the most significant here. I think the Magic have been super hot. Obviously they've had a really good year. They've had a lot of good players come up. But you kind of talk about this sometimes, Sam. You say the Orlando Magic effect, and I know what you mean, right? But for me, it's not so much about the drop off as it's just them regressing to the mean. I would say I don't think anyone ever thought that they would be a top 3 seed in the East. I have them finishing around 5 or 6. Still a good playoff team, but it just doesn't seem like the profit margins are going to be there for them to hold on to as many shares as they had. So kind of just wanted to get rid of them and use it for other teams that I think have a little bit higher ceiling. Let's go ahead and talk about the Pacers here because I'm a big Pacers guy, big Tyrese Halliburton guy. Obviously, I think I started the year with, I think, maybe 20 shares, maybe more than that even. So I was a big believer in them. Obviously, I can still be a big fan of the Pacers, and it's a little bit different to be a fan of this game versus, or I guess a fan of them versus knowing what's going to make money, right? So you kind of have to make that business decision. And I just feel like having as much stock in the Pacers as that I had, and obviously you guys are going to disagree with me this week, I think they're starting to fall off a little bit more. I think teams are starting to kind of focus a little bit more on, as far as other teams defensively, being able to stop the Pacers, stop the shooting, stop the lob third attack. The Pacers defense all year has been pretty bad, so that's kind of stayed true. And I feel like maybe for the formula, it's good because the teams that they lose to, like the Clippers last night, or they're going to get, outscored by 30, 40 points. But and sometimes they're going to win those close games. But I just have a feeling that they're going to be one of those teams that's able to beat up on the bad teams, and they're going to lose heavy to the good teams. And so I'm just not really a big fan of kind of how the formula is going, me personally. And I know you kind of talked a little bit off air about their upcoming schedule. And I think, as this year goes on, we're going to get a little bit more clarification on how much the schedule really matters and who they're playing. But for me, I don't put that much stock into a schedule unless they're playing the Pistons, the Spurs on an occasional night, maybe the Blazers, maybe the Wizards. I think most of the teams in the NBA can win a game on any given night. I think, you look at the Rockets, you look at their, like a Raptors team. What's another team that's kind of, Grizzlies even when they get John Morant back now. So, I think any team can be beaten, and any team can win unless you're the Pistons, and we'll talk about them later. But yeah, I just think it's a pretty safe bet that I don't need 14 stocks of the Pacers. Um, let's go ahead and talk about. We could touch over the Nuggets real quick. The Nuggets I feel like are kind of, I don't know, man. They're a weird team because I feel like when they're fully healthy and they're clicking at all cylinders, they can be the best team in the NBA. And obviously, we've seen that before. We've seen them win the NBA championship, but it just seems like they're a little bit off this year. And I don't know if it's because it's that kind of championship hangover a little bit, or if it's just because teams are game planning a little bit stronger around them. But it seems like they're just not really in sync right now. And I'm not sure if that's going to get much better, at least relatively close to, All-Star break. Maybe once it gets closer to the playoffs and it's in the playoffs and they'll start to hit their stride. But it just kind of seems like they're sleepwalking right now. And so, with their stock still having, pretty good value, I think it's a good time to sell, even though they're not, obviously they haven't made money this week. I think it's an okay time to sell because the more that they're inconsistent, the more that it's going to drop, and you're going to lose that high ceiling value where you started at versus where it's going to be at in, let's say, like a month. And so I kind of just didn't really want to deal with that up and down inconsistency. Um, I'm gonna touch on the Thunder really fast. The Thunder, I feel like, are pretty self-explanatory. They're a good team, but I see them also regressing a little bit. I don't see them finishing second in the West this year, um, but they are a good formula team. That's why I still kept some of their shares. They're going to be a team that wins those close games, and they may not lose by a whole ton, but they're going to lose, probably safely 6 to 9 points every game. So they're a good team for the formula. They're a good team in general. And I think their stock is steady, so I kept some, but I think I just wanted to get off some of them because I feel like there's a higher ceiling with some other teams. Um, don't really want to talk about the Knicks too much. Just not a really big Knicks fan. To be honest with you, I don't really know why I invested in them in the first place. To be honest with you, and obviously it lost me $6 this last cycle, so it wasn't a great decision on my part. With everything going on with them, it's hard to see them getting much better than how they are this year. Now, I think the Warriors for me is going to be one of those teams that I sell now, but I kind of revisit later in the year when it gets a little bit closer to the playoffs, when they get Draymond back. Guys are clicking a little bit more when Andrew Wiggins looks a little bit more mentally invested, when they're going to have to basically be fighting for a playoff play-in spot when their back's against the wall. Because I think the Warriors are the type of team where you can count on if their back's against the wall to sneak out a couple wins against bad or good teams. And so I think it's a team I'm going to be reinvesting in later on, but right now it's just not the right time. And obviously their stock hasn't dropped more than $1, so I think it's a good time to get my profit back that I put in. Um, let's touch on the Nets and Blazers briefly. Nets, I think they're just going to be up and down, very similar to the past few teams I've talked about, kind of like the Nuggets and Thunder. I feel like their team is full of role players and they can do a lot of good things with that, but you just don't really know what you're getting on any given time. One big injury and it could be their season. They could miss the playoffs, or they could be as high as the 7-8 seed at the end of the day, or at the end of the year, I should say. So who knows with that team? I just didn't really want to deal with it. And then the Blazers, just don't really have much to say about them. They're not a very good team right now, and I just wanted to get out while I could. All right, I'm just going to talk about a few of these teams that I bought,
Uh,
mainly
there
the
was there
ones.
was there was one team that you didn't touch up on that you were selling,
It
and
was the
that's
Hawks, but I don't. It's okay. It's nothing really against the Hawks. The Hawks are actually playing well right now. Obviously, the stock price wouldn't indicate that, but um, I'm just not really interested in holding those Hawks anymore. Yeah.
gotcha.
So with the teams that I added, I'm mainly going to talk about the teams that I put a lot of stocks in that I didn't have before, and not so much the ones like the Clippers, Mavericks, um, Lakers. I'll touch on a little bit. I'll kind of just sum up those three teams: Lakers, Clippers, Mavericks. Those teams, it seems like right now are actually hitting a really good stride. Obviously, the Clippers being one of the top gainers. They're finally looking like the Clippers team that we thought that we were going to get. So I just wanted to keep capitalizing on that, and hopefully, their stock price keeps going up. Same thing with the Mavericks. Even with Kyrie out, it seems like they're still able to win games, and they've made a lot of money as well. And so I kind of just wanted to keep putting more stock into that and just capitalize on my net gains. Lakers, same thing. It seems like some nights, AD has been really healthy this year, and that's a big part of it. But some nights, AD will take it off. LeBron might take it off, and they'll still find a way to win. I know they lost to the Spurs the other night without AD, but they're just a team that I can always count on to at least be competitive in the game, and that's a big reason why I think their stock price is up. So the teams that I wanted to focus on, well, yeah, Hornets, so. But anyways, I wanted to focus on the top three: Spurs, Rockets, and Pistons. Obviously, those are my big gainers this week. Let me start off with the Pistons because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. They're so bad right now that their stock has plummeted to a point where I can put in money and not really have to worry about it. If it never comes to fruition, then fine. But me and Sam were talking about it off air. I think the current winning or current losing streak, it feels weird to say that, but current losing streak is currently at 28, I think. And so, hey, they're probably going to break it, but at some point the streak's got to be broken because to hold that kind of streak in one, to you got to have pride about it. You don't want to be a part of that team that has the worst losing record in NBA history. So at some point you have to want to break it. And two, the numbers just back that up. There's a reason why no one's broke it yet. There's been some really bad teams in the NBA in history, and they haven't been able to eclipse 30. So even if they win once, maybe twice, I know it's kind of crazy if that would happen at this point, but it's also not crazy because 4 wins is nothing. So even if they win two, they'll still be 4-23 or whatever it is, 4-24. So they got to be able to get a couple wins in these next couple weeks, and I think, don't quote me on this, but I think their schedule gets a little bit lighter because they had a stretch in these last, I think, 3 weeks that they had some really tough away games. Lakers, Knicks. I think the Mavericks were one of them, and so they not only had a tough schedule, their team is kind of just a mess right now. But I feel like at your worst, even if you're a complete mess, you should be able to get a couple wins in there. So not much risk there, but it was an investment that kind of just pulled the rest of my money that I had left over into. Let's talk about the Spurs a little bit. So I think that, and I think we all kind of agree. Obviously, you see their shares are much higher than mine. I didn't really have as much liberty to sell that many shares because obviously I'm kind of in the hole right now. And I think they would probably take this stance a little bit harder, even. But I think the Spurs are a team that can get wins, and sometimes it's just not really there for them because they are a bad team at the end of the day. But they're a bad team that I think we see improvement in. I think their schedule is going to get a little bit lighter as the season goes, as Victor gets more reps. With everyone in the crew, I think things are bound to get a little bit better for them. And so I think as the Spurs kind of separate themselves from, the play-in area where I think they might have wanted to be, or the players at least. I don't know about the front office or Pop. I mean, I know Pop wants to win, but I just feel like they're a team that could rattle off some wins. And if their schedule says that it's getting lighter, then that's even more backup evidence to do that. And so, being that their stock is still really low right now, it just seems like a good time to capitalize on that and hope that they can be on a nice low win streak. And then also, as far as the formula goes, they're not going to be a team that wins games by a huge margin of victory. They're going to be, winning by, 3 to 5 points roughly. And so that's playing well in the formula because they're going to get blown out in some games, but some games they'll be able to sneak out. So all those factors, it just seems like a good time to capitalize on a low stock price. So my last, my last team, um, 15 on the Rockets. Now, I think if you didn't know where the Rockets were at as far as schedule wise, kind of how we've been playing, the trends of the team, I think you would be a little bit confused by this. But I'll tell you why this is a good investment. So, one, I think finally our team is starting to see cohesiveness because we're starting to see more consistency with the advanced stats with our players. You talk about a guy like Jabari Smith, Tari Eason. You getting Amen Thompson back. I think Fred VanVleet is playing a lot of minutes right now, but I don't see him playing a whole ton of minutes. But so he's going to be more fresh when they need him at the end of the game. Alperen Şengün should be on a similar All-Star trajectory as it gets closer to All-Star break. So I think our guys are kind of just molding a little bit better. I think when the season first started, we figured that the Rockets wouldn't be a very good team, and I don't think they're a great team. I don't even really think they're a good team. I think they're good enough to be average on any given night, which an average team in the NBA on any given night can beat anybody. And so I think that's kind of what you want to see with this formula, I guess, because not only do we very rarely win games by a big margin. I mean, it happened a couple times earlier in the season, but we were playing teams that didn't have their stars, But now that it's kind of settled down, I can't tell you how many games that we've had that we've either lost or won by less than 5 points or less than 6 points. It happens almost every night. Some even go to overtime, like last night against the Cavs. So it plays well in the formula, and our guys are pulling together. And not only that, but we're going to have, I think, the next 9 of 11 games are at home, and our current home record is 11-1. So it kind of just makes a lot of sense to invest in them. And I told Sam off air, he asked, how much of that is bias and how much it is, kind of backed up by good statistics. And I said, 80-20, 80% is backed up by good statistics. 20% I would say is bias. So I would say that also factors into it a little bit. But with the current stock price, it doesn't really seem like I can lose unless this team just takes a complete nosedive. But I just really can't see that happening with a team that's finally gelling together and with a coach like Ime and a bunch of home games coming up.
Well, that was a lot to take in there. But I mean, you needed to make some moves at some point, so this was the week. That's 16 teams that you have either sold or bought this week, which is insane. Geigh and I are invested. So I'm invested in 7 teams. He's invested in 6. So like you made a lot of moves there.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of Gaige's moves, and then we'll kind of talk about some discrepancies because there's quite a few. Starting with the Mavericks. Geigh sold all of his Mavericks shares, which was 35. I was a little kind of perplexed with this, why he wanted to give up all of them. And one of the things he told me was when a team gets into the top gainers, they don't get that success again, except for 2 teams so far this year. And that's like 2 teams that have been on there every single week, the Bucks and the Lakers. Those are the only 2 teams that have consecutively been a top gainer. And he just doesn't like the upcoming schedule. They have to win basically 4 out of their next 6 games. It was, and he just didn't believe in that. He sold 20 on the Lakers. He told me kind of starting to feel like the stock prices get just a little too high because it's getting to the point where, I mean, that's a good expected win percentage, 52%. But the moment they don't hit that, they're dropping like that. They're going to be and him and I agree. The moment the Lakers do not make money, they're going to be one of the biggest losers, just because their stock is just so high
Right.
that it's not gonna be good. And then he ended up selling $5, just I think just to get a little bit more money to play with. I'm going to start bottom to top with some of his teams. Um, he bought 10 more Pacers. That was a team that we looked at, and he just really liked their schedule. They had to win, I think, 4 out of 7 or 5 out of 8 or something like that. Very favorable schedule with some bottom tier teams like the Pistons or the Wizards, Blazers. I think there might be, a back to back with the Blazers. He bought 10 shares there. He jumping in on the Jazz. He bought 15 shares. Another team where they only have to win like two out of their next 6 games to make some money. They just made some money this last week. He's getting 15 shares. Grizzlies, I asked him because I was looking at that schedule and I wasn't a huge fan of it. I didn't buy any. He said John Morant's coming back, and I think that it's going to start turning their season around, like off the
Yeah.
bat. And I was like, yeah, I could see that happening. But the one that we really want to talk about is the Spurs. All the Spurs have to do is win one game, and they should be about flat. They might lose a little bit, or they might gain a little bit, depending on how their other losses go. But their schedule is very, very favorable. And I bought 79 shares of the Spurs. So let me just read their schedule out to you. So let's see. They play the Bucks today, so that's a tough one. The Bulls, which could be a winnable game. Mavericks, probably not. The Jazz, 50-50. Blazers, and then they end with the Celtics. Now, winning 2 games out of those 7 is realistic, even if they are one of the bottom 3 teams in the league. So that's why we invested so much into the Spurs. Geigh putting in 100 shares, I put in 79. Going back to the Pistons, or sorry, not the Pistons, the Pacers, I put in 10 shares. I was one of the guys that was kind of late to the Pacers party. I think I bought some a few weeks ago, and then I sold them after 2 weeks. But again, favorable schedule, a decent expected win percentage there. I am buying 10 Suns. Now, they are one of the biggest losers. In fact, the biggest loser for the last 2 weeks. But I just really liked their schedule. Their expected win percentage is very low. They're only 14-12. Like they're a middle of the pack team. Teams might be starting to kind of overlook the Suns, even though they have Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant. But I think that cohesiveness could be kicking in any time now. I'm expecting them to start moving in the right direction. Thankfully, I sold the Suns 2 weeks ago. I sold 10 shares. Should have sold all 15. That's on me. But I think that buying them back is going to be a good call here as well. I also bought 10 Jazz, while Geigh bought 15. Same reasoning. That expected win percentage is just so low. They play the Spurs. Like, that could be a good win. Like, it's a 50-50. Like, investing in the Jazz and the Spurs there, like, one of them can easily hit their expected and just make you money there. And then one last team that I bought was the Pistons. Kind of with the points that PT you were talking about. I just needed to put money somewhere, and I'm like, why not? All they have to do is win one game, and they'll make me money. That's all they got to do. And if they pull off a miracle and win 2, I'm gonna get some extra. I'm gonna get a few extra bucks in my pocket.
Right.
And all I'm saying is I had 3 shares in the Pistons last week, and yes, they lost money, but that was only $1.50 a share. So I only lost $4.50 last week. That's not gonna hurt. I can
Yeah.
go to McDonald's right now, and I'm spending twice that, 3 times that.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Teams that I decided to sell, I kind of went backwards. That's on me. I sold 15 Lakers as well. A lot of Lakers with Geigh. I think they're the same reasoning. Like any minute they're gonna start. They can start losing money as soon as they don't hit that expected win percentage. I'm not predicting an injury, knock on wood, but AD's been healthy all season.
Yeah.
That's a little worrisome too.
Yeah.
So I sold all my Nuggets. I don't know why I bought 11 Nuggets. I thought that was such a favorable schedule, and it was, and they just could not pull it off. I'm probably not going to buy any more Nuggets for the longest time. I thought that they were going to be the team that made me the most money this year. I was wrong. They're just too topsy-turvy for me right now. I did buy 10 Mavericks. I sold 10 Mavericks. Kyrie being out is kind of scary. I just feel like they had a really good week because they won the games they were supposed to. And that expected win percentage is climbing. I think it was like 540 or something last week. It's now up to almost 60%. So that was a good week. 5 out of 6. Their records solid 16 and 11. But I just think that they might be also hitting a peak as well. But they could also bring me back in if they keep winning too. Sold 5 Cavaliers. They went 500. It was a rather easy schedule. I was not expecting them to go 500. They have they're under 500 for expected win percentage, but I don't want to invest 5 shares because that would have been about $250. And I didn't want to keep those 5 shares in there when I could have spent that $250 on essentially like 15 shares of the Spurs.
Yeah.
And they could make me just as much money, but all they have to do is win 1 game rather than when the Cavs win 3 games.
Right.
So that was kind of my logic there. And then I sold $5. I'm not gonna lie with this. Geigh sold $5, so I'm like, you know what? I could sell $5.
Yeah.
But that was also to get some more shares in to the Spurs, the Jazz, and most importantly, that one Pistons. So
yeah.
So a team that we still like haven't talked about like all season, PT, the Miami Heat. Why are we not trusting the Heat at all? I mean, they're 15 and 11 right now. They have a low. I mean, when I say low, like it's low for a team that's the 3rd highest stock price, an expected win percentage. Like, are we missing a gem here?
I don't know, man. I mean, to be honest, and that's the real answer. I really don't know. This is the one team or one of the few teams in the NBA right now where I just don't really know what they are yet. I need a little bit more sample size. I'm going to have to wait till January or early February to really understand what this team can be because I feel like by any moment they could skydive or not skydive, they could nosedive, or they could just keep being really good and they could be the Heat of a couple years ago. But I just don't really know enough about what they're about, and I don't have enough data to really project what they can be right now.
What's another team that you kind of want to touch up on that maybe all of us are missing or surprised that Geigh and I aren't in on because you're in on a lot of teams that we're not?
Well, I mean, for the most part, we touched on all the teams that I mentioned or bought or sold. But I think it's interesting that we haven't really put any stock into the 76ers. I mean, it kind of makes sense why I think because it's just like I feel like they have the possibility to regress, but they've been winning a lot of games. I mean, they're very much like the Bucks, where you feel pretty comfortable that they're going to be a top 3 seed in the East, and they have an MVP kind of caliber player. But we're not really investing anything in them at all, and I don't really think we have much of this year at all either. And so I think they could be a sleeper because obviously their stock price has increased. and their expected win is going to go up. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a team that's really good right now, and maybe we're sleeping on that team. I think even more than the Heat or another team, to be honest.
Yeah, I just realized that I didn't change something here. So that might. Oh, so the stock price actually went down when I did that. Very, very interesting.
Went down
Uh,
from the current stock, but it still was
yeah,
better
from
than
the
the
current.
previous. Yeah,
Correct. I was wondering because like you were saying that they were a good team, and I'm like, why do they only have 12 wins? So there we go. Good
I
thing.
didn't even see that. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing, dude. Like, they're 18-7 right now. I think they lost yesterday, so 18-8.
Mhm.
They had a perfect week last week, but only gained like $2.50 because of that expected win percentage. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure just by that telling me they probably have the most wins over 15 points or more, and they probably
Mhm.
have the most one possession losses. That's probably
Yeah.
what that's telling me. And here's the thing, in terms of like being a fan, like that's great. Like lose
Yeah.
the close games, but blow teams out. In
Yeah.
terms of the stock market, you ain't making me money, bud.
Right.
Like
That's like the
I'm not
opposite of what you want.
exactly. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they were the biggest loser last week, if I remember. Yep, they were. They lost almost $10 a share.
Mm.
So like that was kind of a rough one to
So it's
imagine. So
basically it's a little bit deeper than what, the team success shows basically.
yeah, and that's I mean as a team that's similar in the similar boat is the Clippers. I mean, they're
Mm.
on a 9-game win streak, but their expected win percentage is 70%. Like they went 6-0 last week, and they also only went up $3.50 a share. They do that again this week, and guess what? They're probably going to only go up $3.
Yeah.
You know,
See, you say that's a very similar team to the Sixers. I think an even better example, and it's in the opposite conference, is the Timberwolves. They have so
yeah,
many wins right now, and their expected win percentage is going to go up more, and their stock price only increased by $1. So you got to
not
imagine,
even.
yeah, not even $1. I'm just rounding. I mean, not even if you round down, it's, barely 80 cents, but. So I mean, they're going to continue, I think, to be a good NBA team, and they're probably blowing some teams out and losing the close ones, just like the Sixers. But they're going to be a team that's going to be consistently good this year. And so yeah, I mean that's kind of the same reasoning why we didn't invest in them, I think, as well.
Yep. One team that I'm waiting for someone to invest in: Washington Wizards. Who's going to be the first one to do it?
Yeah,
I
can't. No.
the irony, and I don't know if Gage is going to exactly listen to this part. He might have tuned out by now.
Yeah.
But the irony, if he's the first one to invest in the Wizards, the
I mean,
irony. He
it's
we
gonna have to be
we
one of us.
always
It's a 1 in 3 chance.
yeah. Or hear me out. None of us buy the Wizards.
It could happen. It could
That
happen.
I'd put my money on that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a team that anybody wants to touch as far as stock prices or really wants to be a fan of at this point.
Right? Um,
Unfortunately.
yeah. Is there anything else you need to add or another team you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I have a topic, but we'll save it for another day.
All right. Sounds good. Um, but once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP. Follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. I've been Sam Holcroft.
I've been Payton Thompson.
Thanks for listening.